Welcome and hello. This is a video tutorial in EPA SWMM, and in this lesson, I'm going to be discussing viewing results, specifically the status report and summary tables. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. What I have on my screen right now is EPA SWMM, and I've got one of the example projects up and loaded. If you want to load one of these example projects, you can go up to the Help menu, Out screen, and then click on any of these sample projects right here. The one I have is Site Runoff Drainage. The status report and summary tables are ways to view the results from a simulation and look at the entire system. They are not really detailed reports where I'm looking at the individual time series of flow data through a conduit. That's for probably the next lesson. So what we're going to be talking about here is in the report menu, the status and the summary table. These can both be accessed also by clicking on this report icon and then clicking on status report or summary results. Now, before you can actually view results, what you need to do is run a simulation. So right down here at the bottom of my screen, I have this green flag, which means that the simulation has been run and there are results to be viewed. But for instance, if you load up a project for the first time, which I'll do right here. All right, so that's what happens. It gives you a little README dialog, little information about the project itself. But you see I have this white flag, which means there's no results available. I'm going to go ahead and run the simulation. Okay, it's been run. Here are results, and now the flag is green and results are ready for viewing. More information about running the simulation and getting that all set up is in previous lessons, like lesson 8 is where I have running simulation. I talk about that. But let's go ahead and look at some of those results. So we'll go up to report and then status. This is going to open up our status report. So I'm going to resize this window a little bit so I can see some more. Here is the entire contents of the report. And keep in mind, this is just the report for the simulation I ran. Different simulations will have different elements and parts and components to the model. So you're going to have different data, of course, but you're also going to have different sections of the report based on the different components that were part of that simulation. To copy data from the report, there's a few different ways to do that. Say, for instance, I just wanted a few lines, so I could just like copy these lines right here. I could go up to the copy button, which is right here, click on copy, and then I can decide, do I want to copy the contents that I just selected to the clipboard or to a file? If I select clipboard and then come over here to a text editor and then paste, Control V, or you can go up to edit paste, or depends on your specific program, but typically Control V or paste will do the trick. Okay. Instead of clicking the copy button, I can select these and then just go up to edit, copy to. It does the same thing. I could say report, clipboard, then come over to my text editor, delete what I had before, Control V to paste, and it's the same thing. If I want to copy and paste the entire report, the best way to do that is to come up here to File, Export, and then click on Status/Summary Report. Now it's going to ask me where I want to save this report. This is a text file. I'm going to just put it on my desktop here and call it Report. All right, so that's saved. And then if I open that up in the text editor, boom, here is the entire report. Let me just make it a little bit wider here and then scroll down. This is the contents of the report. All right. Next, I want to talk about the contents of the report itself, not just how to copy it somewhere else. And what we're going to be talking about is the different sections. So for instance, it starts off here with the name of the model and the version and the build. Below that, we have analysis options. This is where we have a number of the input data. So for instance, the flow units is in CFS. As I have specified down here, the flow units is in CFS. After that, we have process models. These are the different models that are ran in the simulation. So these can be accessed by going over to the Options tab and then double click on General or open up the General. Here are the process models that I'm running for the simulation. We ran the rainfall runoff, flow routing, and water quality. So those are both yes. We did not run groundwater, snow melt, or rainfall dependent INI. So that's why we have rainfall and runoff yes. RDI&I, snow melt, and groundwater are all no. Flow routing is yes, and water quality is yes. And then ponding allowed, that I believe is right here. This checkbox was checked off at the time that I ran the simulation. All right, below that, there are a number of other options set right here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but just keep in mind that infiltration method, flow routing method, surcharge method, The start and end date time, the time steps, all of those are contained within these simulation options here. So time step, here's some dynamic wave properties, files, and then, yeah, here's the infiltration method, Horton, for instance, dynamic wave. So that's why we're seeing dynamic wave, Horton infiltration method, and so on. This status report will also mention a list of errors and warnings. Now, I don't have any errors or warnings, but if you do have errors and warnings, you'll see them in this report as well. The status report also includes the summary input data and control actions. So summary input data is controlled if I go to reporting right here. If I check on this checkbox that says report input summary, then I can go ahead and close that. Let me run the simulation once again. All right, now let me go ahead and open up that status report. And now what you'll notice is we have a lot of data at the top of the report that we didn't have previously. For instance, we have element count, we have pollutant summary, land use summary. None of this was here previously. Rain gauge summary, subcatchment summary, where this is just input data about the subcatchments 1 through 7, for instance, the area, the width, the percent impervious, the percent slope, and then the rain gauge. There's node summary, link summary, cross-section summary, so conduit summary. And then after that, we have where we started with our previous report when we were looking at it previously, which is our analysis options, where we have the flow units is in CFS, and then the different processes that we ran. So yeah, it's an option to include that input data for a checkbox right here. Also, there is control actions. Now, I don't have any controls or gates or any rules that are built into this particular model, but if you wanted to see the control actions that took place during the simulation, you can go ahead and check this on, run the simulation, view the results. You'll see those actions listed in the table as well. All right, so that is it for the status report. That was report status. Next, I want to talk about the report summary. So the report summary includes a bunch of report results, simulation results, but they're in table format. So what we see here is the different topics at the top, and then we see the table data for that topic. There's subcatchment runoff, subcatchment wash-off, node depth, node inflow, outflow loading, link flow, flow classification, and link pollutant load. So you can go ahead and select the different tables. It'll give you the data where each row represents a different element of that type selected. So here are the different nodes listed and identified in this far left column. If I select on, say, link flow, now we have the different links. Links could be conduits, but they could also be any type of link. The same way a node, for instance, would be any type of node, such as a junction or an outfall. Let me go ahead and focus on the first one here, subcatchments. If you want to copy this data, then you can quite easily just click on the table itself, click on the copy button right here, and then, yeah, either clipboard or file. Also, you can invoke this dialog box by going up to edit and then copy to. Again, it gives you the option clipboard or file. If I say clipboard and click OK, and then after that, I bring up my Microsoft Excel, new worksheet, and then paste. All right. So here is my Excel, and then here is the table data right here. So that's a quick way to export to Excel. Also, another way to copy is to a file directly. So say, for instance, I click on summary table, that's highlighted, click copy, click save, okay. And then I just put this on my desktop, for instance. I could just call it table, and then it's going to save as a text file. Okay, let's go ahead and see what that looks like. So open. Here is the table data. Now, it's only in a text file right now, but if you just take a moment to clean it up, it could import into Excel just the same. Okay, let's go ahead and close that. This table can also be invoked not only by going up to report menu and summary, but you can also click on the report icon and then summary results. Here's that same summary table here. Each of the columns represent a different parameter that's associated with that element. So I'm in the subcatchment runoff table. We have subcatchments S1 through S7. We have total precipitation in inches, total runoff in inches, total evaporation in inches, total infiltration. The next two columns here is runoff from the impervious area and runoff from the pervious area. Now keep in mind the units here are in inches because it's depth, and my model happens to be using US customary units. If you're using metric or SI units, you'll probably see millimeters for depth and then liters for volume instead of gallons, or cubic feet. Kind of depends on if we're talking about flow rate or volume or whatnot. Keep in mind, you're not seeing all the columns in this table. You may need to use this horizontal scroll bar at the bottom of the table. So I'm just going to click that a few times and see the remaining columns here. We have total runoff depth, total runoff, and this is in million gallons, and then peak runoff in CFS. Runoff coefficient right here. One other column I'd actually like to see is the time at the peak runoff, but we can determine that later by looking at the flow hydrographs. This far right column for runoff coefficient looks like there's zero runoff from subcatchment 7 and the highest value runoff from subcatchment 6. Also, fairly low runoff coefficient from subcatchment 3. And that should be consistent with the percent impervious associated with each of those subcatchments. Let's go ahead and check that out real quick. If I go up to project and then details and I click on subcatchments, we have our 7 subcatchments right here. And then the percent impervious is right here. So as expected, subcatchment 7, S7, has a 0% impervious, which means it's 100% pervious, but subcatchment 6 is 95% impervious. So we'd expect a lot of runoff from subcatchment 6. And also subcatchment 3 is fairly low on percent impervious. So just doing a quick ballpark check just to spot check and make sure that these runoff coefficients are sort of what I expect based on the percent impervious from each subcatchment. So sometimes as a modeler, it's good to just make some spot checks to make sure that your data is consistent. Just because the model runs doesn't mean that the results are correct. All of the columns that I mentioned here are listed in detail in the user's manual. So I'm looking at chapter 9, viewing results right now. This particular lesson is talking about 9.1 and 9.2. This is the user's manual version 5.2. So if I click on viewing summary results, the PDF will take me directly to this topic right here. We see the same table. And then if I scroll down, you see all of the individual columns and then what they mean. So if you're ever curious about some sort of abbreviated column title like total infill inches, you can refer to the user's manual where it's talking about the total infiltration in inches or millimeters. Also, the user's manual has this asterisk mark that is next to a number of these different columns. Not all of them, but some of them. And that just means that if there's an asterisk, items marked with an asterisk can also be viewed as color-coded themes in the study area map by selecting the map browser. So anyway, back to the table, column descriptions. We have descriptions for the subcatchment runoff table, lid performance table, groundwater summary table. This goes on for pages and pages. And keep in mind that we did not even see all of these categories in our results up here. There's no groundwater, for instance, and that's just because this particular model didn't have any aquifers or groundwater processes that were run. All right, the last cool thing about the summary results table here is that you can select an element, select a specific row, and when you do that, it will highlight in the map and it will also highlight in the project browser. So if I select S3, for instance, boom, now S3 is highlighted, and then S3 is also selected over here in the project browser. And then one other thing the user's manual mentions is that if you click on a specific column heading, it's going to sort and then sort ascending and then descending back and forth. It'll just toggle the sort direction as you continue to click it. That way, if you have a particular interest in a maximum or minimum value, you can easily sort your results that way. And it's not just for subcatchment data, it's for all of these tables. You can sort based on the column that you select and click. Well, that's it for this lesson. What we talked about was viewing results from a completed simulation. Specifically, in this lesson, we talked about viewing the status report and the summary results.